Welcome to the Ferment Podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guest is worship pastor and songwriter, Anabeth Morgan.
Anabeth Morgan, what's up?
Hey, Adam.
Hey. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're becoming a pro.
What?
You're becoming a pro. You've been on this podcast a lot. You're like a real pro content creator.
Thank you.
Influencer.
Whoa. I'll take it, Adam.
That's
I'll
right.
take it.
That's right. Well, glad you're back. Glad we're getting to do this in person. We're not on the Zooms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, here's what I want to do today. This is a little conversation that we're having, and it's sitting inside of a month of podcasts that are about leading better worship. So all of these like little conversations this month are all about leading better worship. And what I wanted to talk to you about was leading the room, like actually standing on the stage and leading the room, not just doing songs, but like all the other things that can kind of happen in a worship set. And I guess I want to set it up by saying this. When I think about all the gifts that you have all these gifts. Like you're a songwriter, you're a great singer, you're a great worship leader, you're a great friend, you're an includer and a gatherer. You're like one of these people who you're a glue person in Vineyard Worship. You like make it happen, right? But one of the things that sits at the top for me, if I were to, not that I'm ranking all of your gifts, but if I were to say, hey, what's kind of sitting at the very top, I would say you're a really, really great worship leader. Oh, you know?
Thank you.
That doesn't diminish any of the other gifts you have, but you're just this really great worship leader. And you have this way of pulling the room together, you know? And it's really extraordinary. So I'd love it if maybe we just started this conversation by you talking to me about your approach to leading worship. When you think about leading worship and you stand on the stage, what are you hoping for?
Well, first off, I feel like I'd be unfair if I didn't tell you you're making me blush. And it's very sweet of you to say all those things. I guess the simplest thing is when I think about I'm going to start here. When I think about music, I've always heard and I've always experienced, music has this ability to pull down the walls that you build up around your heart. So whether, it doesn't matter, Christian music or not, it's literally this thing that music does. It brings people into awareness of their emotions, because all these things that are up around our hearts and then the busyness and just the ways we protect ourselves, music kind of pushes all that down, and then there's access, right? Yep. And so when I started thinking about leading worship, I was like, well, if people's walls are going to be down, then what a more perfect opportunity for God to have invitations that are specific to hit people's hearts.
Yeah.
And so, you know, in this thing called the Vineyard, there's this thing called ministry time. Yeah. And I always was wondering, hey, Lord, I love ministry time at the end. And we play like background music over ministry time. But when I'm in the congregation sitting there experiencing worship, it's like almost like the music is a vehicle for me to hear the Lord more easily and feel him. And when I'm on a stage, it's like, it's amazing how much better I can see him. Yeah. I don't know why. Oh, well, because music is, again, opening people up to the truth of who God is and what he's doing in them, all those sorts of things. And so that kind of gave me this open door to start to be curious about, is worship leading more than just singing songs?
Yeah.
You know, and so that's kind of where it started, just that thought alone. And I just started to do a few things by myself over here with the Lord going, well, Lord, how does this look? And even just got really curious. And then I had to be in an atmosphere where a church would let me try stuff, if I'm honest, right?
Yeah.
So I was in Columbus at the time when this really started to unfold in front of me. And I was encouraged deeply by Rich Nathan and Steve Robbins and Michael Hansen, you know, in small spaces, like in our staff meeting. Hey, why don't you lead us in worship? And if you sense God doing something, share it, right? And this sort of permission helped me navigate what maybe you're describing as great worship leading now.
Yeah.
You know? So,
well, and just by way of context, you're hitting on some of the things that I'm thinking of when I think about the way you lead worship.
Yeah.
I think everybody brings a gift to worship.
Yeah.
You know, we all have something to bring as worship leaders or just as people in the band and whatnot. But I think part of what I've seen operate in your life is, okay, we're definitely going to sing the songs. We're gonna do that together.
Yeah.
All the voices, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Let's have the harmonies. Let's have the band do well.
Yes.
And make a space for us. But I think the thing I've noticed in your worship leading is that there is oftentimes a moment, sometimes very short, where you sort of just take us on a left-hand turn, and it would be kind of a ministry moment, right? Like, yeah.
For sure.
Okay, so when that happens, is that something like that you're experiencing in the moment, or is that something that you're experiencing like you feel like God is talking to you on your drive to church or something?
Yeah, it's both and, but if I'm honest, mostly it's beforehand. And yes, so I do have little rhythms. Like, it was funny when this stuff really started to happen more regularly for me. I would hear God speaking to me while I was blow drying my hair.
Yeah.
So silly, right? But I'd be blow drying my hair like, wee. And then I'd start to think about leading the people in worship and just imagining. Your brain just starts to picture your space, you know? And then all of a sudden I'd start to have these like very simple words like, people are tired, or people really need to know that I'm rescuing, or these themes, right?
Yeah.
And so then I would pray about that. And then because I was insecure, and at the time I had a person with me that oversaw worship and I didn't, I would take it to rehearsal and say, hey, I was blow drying my hair and the Lord started talking to me about this today. What do you think? And then they would usually encourage me. Hey, I think you should continue to pray. And if there's a moment while we're leading worship that you want to either pray that out or speak it out, let's do that. And let's be honest, I'm outgoing, but I have lots of nerves when I'm standing in front of people. And so it started off as a prayer. It started off as in the middle of a song, just going, thank you, Lord, that you rescue us.
Yeah. God,
would you come and make us aware of how you're rescuing us and protecting us from things? Because I was too scared to just boldly give the word. But I think God takes the little thing I'm willing to do and then gives me courage for more. He's really kind that way.
Yeah.
And then it turned into more of the ministry moment. Now, that happens, right? But then, if I'm honest, sitting with you today, I just have a really deep conviction of this language. Every time I'm with a person, there's probably an invitation of the Lord there. And so simply saying, hey, God, what's your invitation to me and such as we have lunch? What's your invitation to the creative meeting for today? What's your invitation to this songwriting session? What's your invitation to this service? What's your invitation? And that's where I'm trusting in the moment. But it's not like people, I think, can get frustrated. They're like, well, what are you special that he just tells you what those invitations are? No, because there's a lot of practicing it. I don't want to sound like I'm so special. I live this way. Like, I do this on Monday. Like, what's your invitation, Lord, to Jovi today? Because she's going through this thing in school and she's only 6. Or, God, what's, in my job as a pastor, and I use this ad nauseum. What is your invitation? Because I know that God desires to show up in things. And I don't get it right, but usually he's really kind and he'll give you an invitation for like an individual as well as 300 people, as well as 3,000 people. I mean, it's just learning. There are nuances and there is artistry and things and how you facilitate it, but that's at the bottom. That's the jugular. It's that God is inviting us all the time. And are we asking what it is and then shutting up long enough in our lives to know how to hear him? Because we don't all hear him the same way, Yeah,
I guess what I'm hearing in your story here is you just live with a lot of expectation that God wants to do things.
Oh, very high.
Very high.
Very high expectation. Yeah. Like a little too optimistic, right? Where you're at risk of being devastated, Where, because if you put yourself out there and you're like, God's going to do it. And then you have to be careful because in the world of gifts, you can get a little too exaggerated, right? It's like, God wants to do stuff all the time and it's got to be epic.
Yeah.
And the reality is, it is epic, but sometimes it's just the daily invitation. I mean, Brother Lawrence was onto something when he said, practice God's presence while you're washing the dishes.
Yeah.
In worship leading, though, it feels more magnified because there's this music thing and you have this culture that's like, look how cool, and I love your voice, and this song rocks, and the drums are cool, and all that's awesome. Again, like I said in the beginning, that's the gift of music, connecting people and getting their attention. But I'm wondering while I'm leading worship as like a shepherding moment, like this is a flock of sheep that you love, Lord, and I'm facilitating and shepherding them. Which direction am I guiding them? What am I guiding them to? And I want to like steward that well. I don't
Yeah.
want to take it for granted. And I don't want to be so insecure that I'm going like song to song, song to song, song to song. Because
Yeah.
sometimes that's just out of insecurity. We're like, let the music do the work because I don't want to say anything, or let the music do the work because I want to get off the stage as quick as possible, or, you know? And so,
Yeah, when I think about really great worship or really great worship leading, for me, like some of the little boxes that get ticked are, you know, a really great worship set or a great worship leader is not just hustling us through the songs. I really hate when it feels like it's just a jukebox. We're just like the song, you know?
oh,
We have the arrangement. The arrangement is like, we follow the arrangement perfectly.
it's like radio. It's like 3 minutes run, bro.
You know, and it feels, I mean, it's great. God is honored, you know, but it's missing that sense of we're having some kind of a conversation together as a people, and then some kind of a conversation as a people to God.
Yes.
And then God to the people, you know? And so I love that you're saying that, because I'm just very aware of those times when it feels like, we're just hustling through songs.
Or we're just, you can do it the other way too, right? Like those people are like, well, if we wait long enough, something will finally happen. And you're
Yeah.
like, hey, dude, this moment's past. Move to the next song.
Yeah.
It does, just because we linger long doesn't mean God's going to come in the space.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I do know. For me, it's, hey, this life I'm living Monday through Saturday has everything to do with how I lead on Sunday.
Yeah.
And there's a discernment piece here. And do some people have more discernment than others? Sure. Like you said, there's specific gifts that are, you know, greater in some than others. But I think the gift of discernment is access for everyone. It's not like God's like, hey, I want them to be able to tell what I'm doing, but I don't want you to be able to know.
Yeah.
God is not like that. So I want to practice discerning in my life, because what I don't want to be known for, Adam, is like every time Anabeth leads worship, she feels like she has to talk.
That's right.
That's really obnoxious, right?
Yeah, of
like,
course.
Because you can get in the way. It's like the songs can actually do the work.
Or it's just a shtick.
Right. It's just, that's what you do. You
Yeah.
know, you're like a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
It's like, well, when's Anabeth going to give her ministry moment? Because that's what she does.
Yeah.
I want it to be like, no, this is what God does. And if he's doing that right now, I want to facilitate it. But if he's not, let's sing. Let's
Yeah.
sing some more. You
That's
know?
right. That's right. Well,
So-
this is the question I had put down, and we're kind of like hitting on it. So
Okay.
let me just focus it a little bit here. Talk to me about how you balance the impulse to talk, direct ministry, and then simply lead the song.
Totally.
Right? Because
Totally.
because you're right. Like we could fall too far on just doing songs and following the arrangements and the click track, and we're just hustling through the set. And then you are right. Like we don't want it to become a shtick. We don't want it to be like, oh, this is Anabeth's little thing, or this is Adam's little thing. You know,
Yes.
third song, we're gonna. Everybody knows we're gonna
This
take
is-
a minute. You know. So talk to me just about balancing that, talking, directing ministry, and then actually just giving people the chance to sing and give their hearts to God.
Totally. This is where, you know, when you cook without a recipe and you're like, well, this batch, it still tastes like a blueberry muffin, but it's got a little too much sugar.
Yeah.
Or this one doesn't have enough. This is where, again, you're not going to get it perfect. But I think this is so simple. If you plan a set list, then you should worship to the set list. Even if you have sung those songs 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Because let's say the song, you know, we'll pick one that is really popular. What a Beautiful Name,
Sure.
right? If I'm going to predict what that song's going to do, it's going to really hit the room at that big old bridge.
Yeah. I mean, the song is made for that.
It's made for that. The heavens are roaring. He's got no rivals, people, and people's hair's on fire.
Yes.
Now, as a leader, I can put that song in the set list as a kindness to the congregation, like a lobbed softball.
Yeah.
That's, hey, let's knock a home run here. And that's fine, because people can shut their eyes and they know it. I can also put it in the set list as a kindness to myself, like, well, at least the room will engage here if I'm insecure. I
Yeah.
mean, let's be honest. This is real, right?
No, you pick your best cards sometimes.
Right. I can also, just without all that stuff in it, know that this song's work will mostly get done when we get to the bridge.
Yeah.
I can also, though, sit with that song this week when I lead it, if I'm going to, and go, hey, Lord, I've never led this song on February whatever, and this year with these people, is there a different spot that's going to be highlighted? If so, let me be aware of it, right? And what I mean by that is when the song does the work, maybe it's the second verse. You didn't want heaven without us, so you sent heaven down. Wow, maybe that lyric is what's jumping off and into my heart and gonging when I'm in my living room on Tuesday with it. So that may mean that I arrange the song for Sunday differently, you know? I may also ask the Lord, if this is gonging in my heart, show me if you want me to stop at the end and say, we just sang, you didn't want heaven without us, so God, you sent heaven down. And I felt like this week God shared this with me. I may speak. I'll be honest though, I get in really insecure spots where there's this thing in me personally. I'm extroverted. I can talk a lot. Like I can get in these spots in my own heart and head where I'm like, you do too much talking. So I'll just decide ahead of time, let the songs do all the talking. Yeah. Don't talk, right?
Yeah.
That's not a great spot to make that decision from.
It's funny how this is all a dance, isn't it?
It's such a dance.
We have to learn ourselves.
Yes.
We have to learn the voice of God.
Yes.
We have to learn the people that we're leading. Maybe even in the moment. I mean, like great worship leaders, and I think you intuit this. You're one of them, Mm-hmm. I think you are somebody who's really good at intuiting not just the things maybe you've heard from the Holy Spirit earlier in the week, but also like what's just in the room right now,
Totally.
Is everybody just Homer Simpson blinking?
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean?
I do.
What
a lot of them are.
Or has something else come into the room? Maybe I thought this was going to be one thing, but here we are. We're going somewhere else, and yeah.
Can I like give you a few cheaters? I mean, this feels so silly.
Oh, I love it. We need cheaters.
These are the silly, easy things. I mean, if we aren't, as worship leaders, aren't asking ourselves, who are the people I'm leading? Who's the audience? What I mean by that is like, if I'm going to sit in front of a group of church planters, I'm going to lead differently because they're church planters. And I start to think about how hard it is to plant a church, and maybe there's some ministry that God just would want to do practically because they're church planners. Yeah. So I'm going to choose songs maybe about him being a firm foundation, because everything about church planting feels like nothing's firm, Yeah. I mean, that's just logical. That's not even this magical like, oh, how did Anabeth
that's good
know
pastoring.
that?
That's good leading. Know the room. Know your audience, right?
Right. I mean, that's just cheating.
Speech class 101.
Right.
Who are you talking to?
So who are you singing to?
Yeah.
And that should inform everything about what you're singing.
That reminds me as well about how important it is as worship leaders to actually just know our church. Like know people outside of the band.
That's what I was going to say. The hardest room to know, though, so I say that like church planter, that's easy. Or like, a group of worship leaders. When you get on Sunday, you're like, hey, this room is full of diversity. Yes, it is. But when you look out, if you're looking out as a worship leader and you're aware, I don't know, 75% of the faces in this room, you've got some work to do. Yeah. That means you got to come off the stage. Because unless your church literally has that amount of turnover, that'd be a lot of turnover. It's like everyone's new every week. I hope not. I hope not. Because you know what? When I look out onto a room, some Sundays it's risky, but maybe there's a family in the church that's lost a kiddo. And God's kindness is to go after that one, right? And so sometimes it's selfish in leadership, but if God's highlighting that, there's a moment where that church family, and through a song, can minister just to that family and what they're going through. Yeah. And it's not selfish. It's what God wanted, Yeah. That's not often, right? I mean, that's not often.
But you do have to know.
But you have to at least know, and I have to know their story to do that. And so it's a dance for sure.
A few weeks ago, it's been over a month ago, in Kentucky, we had all these insane tornadoes. So in Western Kentucky, and then in my own county, we had unbelievable tornadoes.
They were massive.
Massive. They showed up in the middle of the night. So in Western Kentucky, one town in particular got completely wiped out. Over 1,000 homes just gone, like completely gone. And in Taylor County, where I live, it was about 70 families' homes were just eviscerated, like to the foundation, gone. Boom. Right?
Terrible.
Yeah, super terrible. People were really traumatized because it happened in, A, it's just like, it's your home. And then B, it happened at night. I mean, it scared people to death and people died, So this happens. We come to church. Hannah and Glenn are leading. It's just another like example of like knowing and what a great worship leader is, And Hannah leads this song that Glenn had written 8 years ago. And the bridge of the song is, through all these winds and all these storms, your love is good and always for us. And it killed the room. I mean, it just killed the room. And
it's perfectly placed.
It's perfectly placed. It's just being a good leader, to your point a minute ago. You know, it's not even like getting a word from God.
No.
It's just going, who are these people and what have we experienced this week and what do we need to say to God? And fortunately, there's some songs that have the perfect lyrics for us.
Fortunately.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's
okay.
really beautiful.
Any other cheaters? You said you had cheaters.
Yeah. So I think knowing your audience is always a cheater. Another cheater is if you have like rhythm personal liturgy. So what does that mean? Well, in church, you show up and you do the same pieces of a service almost every week in the same order. In life, maybe you have some same pieces in the same order, right? And maybe one of them is you say the Lord's Prayer to start your day.
Yeah.
Sometimes, it's not all the time. Again, it's the dance thing, which is the most annoying part of of what we're talking about, the unpredictability. But sometimes you can just draw off of, you can almost draft from that. So it's not like I need to make something happen, so I'll do this. It's that, you know what? I enjoy saying this prayer to the Lord every morning between He and I want to see if my congregation would also enjoy doing that. Again, it's not some magical like, Lord, is it going to be wrong if I do it this week? It's like permission to play. And I will say, some of this comes with equity and trust with you and your congregation. So the more you're up there and the more steady you are, you need to build equity with your congregation. The way you build equity with them is you show up and you sing the songs and you don't scare them, you know. Yeah. But the longer you do this, people really do trust you, almost to a fault. I mean, at this point, there are people in our church, if I said, hey, you should take your socks off.
They'd be like, that's what God's doing today.
Exactly. How silly does that, right?
Yeah.
We're laughing. But that's the attention. So many worship leaders don't even realize that's the amount of authority you have when you're standing there.
Yeah.
So steward it well, you know? And don't downplay it. Also, don't take advantage of it. Most people aren't taking advantage. Most people act like they don't have any authority and they just sing songs. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, you really do have like an opportunity to facilitate healing, facilitate encounter, facilitate the active and living presence of God. Why would you not want to like plan and participate with that ahead of time? Because who's impressive enough to do all of this in the moment? All of this cannot be spontaneous.
No.
It cannot.
No.
Even the most spontaneous YouTube moments that you love to watch, yeah. I feel like there's an iceberg of, you know, the layer we don't see of other things that person, you're just seeing the tip that's coming out and it is so powerful, but so much is under the surface.
Well, what I loved about the example you gave a moment ago, like maybe you get up in the morning, you just say the Lord's Prayer. And then you let your feet hit the floor, you know, you get on your day. And maybe you bring that to worship. What I love about that example is there's something about it that feels like, oh, we're letting our leadership just reflect the reality of our life. Right?
Totally.
We're just bringing our actual life into this. And you know what? Sometimes these practices we have, whatever it is, maybe we say the Lord's Prayer, or maybe we sit in silence for 2 minutes, or maybe we have one scripture that we read. It's kind of like a live scripture we keep returning to. Those things have ways of becoming little wells that we've dug. There's real sustenance in them. There's real refreshing in them. Mm-hmm. We've actually pulled this out. We've found a place with God and it's reality for us. And what we don't realize is oftentimes we can share that. Without any fanfare.
Nothing.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. You know?
Yes.
Just when that gets really inside of me, I can actually give that away.
Absolutely. And it's beautiful. I will say, if you're like me and you would listen to this and you go, I want to teach people to do this as well. There is a propensity to, when you start, you got to start somewhere, right? So you're like, I want to start leading this way. Okay, good. Well, the easiest place to start is with what God's doing in your life. So it may look a little funny and bumpy and lumpy because you come to church going like, let me tell you what God was doing with me this week. And then the church is like, oh, that's really sweet. And you're like, uh-oh, it wasn't for the room, right? It was just for me. That's okay. Yeah. There's grace for that. But this is not leading vulnerably. I do not show up on stage and just start telling everyone, these are all the words God spoke to me this week. This is the song, I'm leading the
That's
song
right.
that hit me this week. That's not what we're talking about. It's so much more about how God's interacting with them.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I just want to clarify that because I don't want people being like, oh, Anabeth said just tell everybody from stage what God's doing with me all the time.
Again, though, it's a dance, though, isn't it?
For sure.
It is.
For
Yeah,
sure.
like we can
Back and forth.
In the same way that a person or a friend can like show up to our house and overshare. You know,
Adam, what are you saying?
I'm just saying it's possible. I don't know. But there's this dance here.
Yeah.
You know, if we never reveal who we are or who God is to us or the things that are actually happening in our life, even on a stage on Sunday morning, that feels weird to me a little bit. Mm-hmm. You know?
You're not human.
I'm not a human.
You're like a superhero.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. You want to talk about that? Say more about that. That actually feels important.
It is important. So oh my gosh, 2019. This is a good marker. Before the pandemic, the Lord started talking to me about, in leading people, he started talking to me about, hey, make sure they know you're human. I'm like, well, what the heck does that
It's one of the 4 H's of Vineyard Worship.
Hey, there you go. Hey. Shout out to Vineyard Worship.
That's it.
Is it the third H?
It is.
Okay, there you go.
It's the one I taught on for our little video series this week.
When that comes out, people are going to love that.
They're going to freak out.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. So I'm like, well, obviously I'm human, right? What does that mean? And what I realized, what God was doing really kindly was I would show up in conversations with people and lead in a way where they would tell me all their pain, all their humanity, the ways things were hurting them in life. You know, just when I think about human, their limitations, right? And I would just sit there and mostly, especially if it was in a conflict, I would just be like, I'm so sorry you felt that way. Or, man, that must have stunk for you to have that person make you feel that way. And I never was reciprocating. I was never going like, you know, I felt that way too, and let me share with you. I was protecting myself because for some reason in my mind, it meant that I was less of a leader if I entered in too much with negative things. And let's be honest, if you're a pastor, this is a pastor moment. If you're a pastor, you're like, I don't want to complain. Everybody complains, right? You just get in these weird moments. Well, we're also in positions of authority where people come to us hoping we'll like help them live life well. You know, you're like, I'm not a counselor. I'm also not God. I'm just, But they kind of treat you like that. All this makes you superhero-ish. People start to experience you as like, you are better than them. You're more gifted than them. You don't have the same experiences in life as them. So then I'm on stage and they're like wowed by a gift of singing or whatever it is. And again, it's like the pedestal gets further. It's like if humanity's down here, you're up above them and in this other realm, right? And that's what God was like really trying to get in me deeply. And it was very hard. It was very hard to stand in front of church and do these vulnerable things. Like, you know, my dad passed away real suddenly just about a month ago. And I don't know about y'all, but we're singing a song today where some of the lyrics say, "You're never going to let me down." And I just have to be honest with you. I'm leading us through this song today, and this is a help me in my unbelief moment.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, did the room get a little awkward in that moment? Yeah. But did the room also, more people probably emailed me that week and came up to me afterwards saying, thank you so much for saying that, because I feel like that all the time. I'm like, can I actually sing this? And it's good. And I became like a bleeding leader, you know, like nails in my hands. Like, hey guys, remember Jesus was fully human and fully God. I'm not saying I'm Jesus, but that's part of that picture. It's like, it's important that he came fully human and fully God.
No, it's a big deal.
Right? So many worship leaders are like, I don't want to become like a famous worship leader. I'm like, then be as human as possible all the time.
I'm so glad that you're framing it like this, because there's so many things about worship leadership than just the celebrity culture that sometimes surrounds worship. It makes us less human.
Yes.
And even the thing you were saying a moment ago, you're on stage and people are probably experiencing you in your giftedness. And so maybe they only know you in that context. Like, oh, Anabeth's a great leader and she sings really well, and wow. And people begin to think something different about you. And
Yes.
then they feel worse about their own lives.
Yes.
And they don't realize, man, everything that's happening in your life is happening in my life.
Everything. I mean, everything.
And lyrics that are difficult for you are difficult for me. And, some weeks I come to church to preach or to lead and I wasn't great.
Sure.
I was just really, pretty weak, pretty limited. Yeah, that's great. Worship leaders, your humanity is not keeping God from working.
No. And like if you get to the end of a Sunday and you're like, well, I missed it on that set list. The room didn't go to an 11 or whatever your measurement is for success in worship. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at what could I have done better, right? That's fine to go, hey, where did we lose the people? Was it this new song we did? Was it, whatever. But the most gracious thing you can say to yourself is, it wasn't up to me. God's still at work. And it's not my job to make people's hair light on fire. I mean, that's become the marker of a great worship leader. We're all going to fail. That can't be the marker. I mean, we cannot, let me get on a soapbox for a minute. We cannot watch YouTube videos that have been produced and edited and millions of dollars spent on them and then go, that's what we have to produce on Sunday. No one can do that, including those people that produce the YouTube video.
Yeah,
They've done a lot of work after the fact, and it's
Well-
not human. That's different. So,
And they may have recorded 17 Sundays to get that one moment. Right.
So give yourself a break and be very human.
Well, yeah. Let me just throw one more thing on this human thing here for a moment, because you said a moment ago, it doesn't mean that we reflect back on our worship leadership, look at the Sunday and go, well, what could have been better? How could I have done X, Y, Z?
Yes.
Right? That's a good thing to do some evaluating. But also that's very human, because in addition to humanity, meaning limitations, weakness, not possessing God's omnis, all of those things, right?
Yes, finite.
Finite. But one of the things that means is that part of what it means to be a human is that we can grow. God cannot grow. He just simply is. But human beings can grow, change, adapt, and learn. And so this whole idea of we want to look at what happened on a Sunday, we want to do two things on that. Let's say it's like what you were saying a moment ago. Let's say it's a Sunday that wasn't spectacular. I'm using air quotes here. Well, what can we learn? What can we do better? And at the same time, just as much, we want to say, well, it doesn't always have to be spectacular. We're all humans. Maybe we all stayed up late last night. Maybe it was New Year's Eve and maybe we're just tired, and that's okay. God is not upset with that. And at the same time, because I am a human, I can grow. I can learn. I can change. I can adapt. I can receive feedback and learn something new.
That's really beautiful, because so many times that word human has a negative connotation in the context of how beautiful God is, right?
Yep.
And it isn't. It's beautiful that we can still grow and be resilient and change, and that's a really beautiful way to look at that.
Yeah, that's something, honestly, that's something that our mutual friend Ted Kim and I've been talking about a lot lately is the fact that part of what it means to be human is not just weakness, it's the ability to change. It's the ability to grow, that's the beautiful side.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I can grow.
Yeah, and I have grown.
Yes.
There are real places in my life that I have grown. I'm not the same person I used to be. And there are places in my life currently that I need to keep growing.
Yes.
One of the places in my life right now I'm trying to grow is I'm just trying to learn how to lead my staff and my church leadership team and even teams at Vineyard Worship. I'm just trying to learn how to lead them better. And by that I just mean more caring, more actual caring, not slicker, but more caring, because as a younger man, I'm good at getting stuff done. But I might not be aware of everything that's happening in your life. I might get you to do something with me and be completely unaware of your emotional field or how you're feeling or the toll that whatever it is we're doing together is taking on you and me, right? So yeah, that's something I'm learning how to grow.
That's great.
And that's because I'm a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love that.
There you go, guys. There you go.
That was extra.
That's extra. Anabeth, let's shift gears here a minute. This is kind of granular, just a little detail-y. Talk to me about how you prep the band for the possibility of doing something different in a worship set. Like you planned your 4 songs. You've been practicing them. You've been listening for the Holy Spirit. Maybe it's not the bridge of Build My Life this week. Maybe it's going to be second verse. You've done all those things. But how do you prep your band? They're volunteers.
Sure. Some things are ahead of time. So if the promptings are happening, like hanging out in the second verse, and then I just make sure the arrangement reflects ahead of time, right? So we practice the song with this alt version in mind, meaning, and I'll tell them, hey guys, I spent time with the song earlier. I feel like this is where the heat is, the heat feels like it's on this. So we're going to repeat here. Okay. That's not normal. I know, but that's what we're going to do. And then a lot of times if I have a gut feeling, I have no direction, but I'm like, okay, this is where the space is for God to just interact with the people. I'll intuitively in the rehearsal say, hey guys, at the end of this song, we're just going to stay on the chorus chords. I don't want any drums. I do actually piano. Will you just stay in? Electric, will you start to swell? Giving direction. But hey, the chord arrangement, I'm not going off the chorus. Even if I start singing things and you're like, this isn't on the sheet. It's not on the slide. What is she doing? Musically, I'm not doing anything different. I'm on the chorus of this song. I'm just saying or doing something else. Okay. And then if I'm in a moment, which isn't super often, where it's like, and we're going into a totally different song, just a piece of it, I cut the whole team out right in the moment. And then I start into whatever I'm going to sing. And good news is, and I never think ahead of time, like, who's on my team? Are they good enough to handle this, right? None of that's in my mind. I don't even think that way when I'm in the moment. I just know, oh man, this is burning on the inside of me. I have to sing the chorus, just pour it out. That's what we got to do right now, know? And oh crap, we didn't even mention that in rehearsal. Oh no, but I can do it. Some of it is practical. I'm like, okay, good. We're not in the key of G where I'm like, I can't even say that. Yeah. So some of that's happening, but I'm like, we're singing Pour It Out right now. When I cut the band out, it's me and my acoustic. That is what's helpful for me. I lead from an instrument. It's harder to do this stuff when you don't have an instrument. But this is what I want to speak to in that. There are people in my band that are intuitive, more intuitive musically, meaning their ears, they can go, oh, she's just in the same key. Oh, that's the 4. That's the 5.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting how they're intuiting and their version of leadership. So my electric player may still be playing with me. And it's helpful when they do that and they feel it out, right? And so the good news is over time, people in my team are used to my leadership. So they grow in their ability to intuit on stage. Oh, but I try really hard. This is another thing. There is this belief, it's like, hey, the more spontaneous it is, the more powerful it is. Like, it means, I can't stand it when people are like, it means more when people don't know me at all, and then they pray for me, and they know everything about me. No, it doesn't mean more. Is that impressive? And is there a higher level of prophecy flowing in that moment? Maybe, but it doesn't mean more. Like when my husband, who knows everything about me, prays for me, I don't care that he knows all the details. It's still powerful. Like it feels a little funny to me. I don't want to keep secrets like, well, let's just see if the band can figure out where I'm going because it's more fun when it's spontaneous. No, It's like I try really hard to give the band as much information as possible. Mm-hmm. And sometimes do I want to stay on the chorus chords while I'm doing this little thing? Nope. But I told the band I would, and I'm just going to do that to serve the team. We're going to stay there. We're going
to do what we said.
Yes. And so, again, I'm definitely describing a dance. Let's just caveat all of what we're having this conversation around. It's easier to do what I'm talking about when you're a P on the Myers-Briggs. A J, a black and white, it's like this or it's that. It's a little harder by temperament, right?
Perceiver.
Yeah, because the dance is like, well, there's a lot of gray here,
I know. I live in that world.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I enjoy that.
Yeah. So it's good to recognize that. It's good to say, hey, my worship leading just by temperament, I really like it's black and white. And that doesn't make it less. But partner with the Lord in your Janus,
Yeah.
and say, hey, Lord, you still are spontaneous, and there's a way for you to speak to me ahead of time that makes this feel a little more
Alive. It's alive.
It is.
It's just alive.
It's just alive. And so these are just little ways to think about this stuff. But
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah.
We should make a little resource, Anabeth. The Myers-Briggs and worship leaders.
does this not exist? I'm assuming it exists.
I don't know. It might not exist. Like if it doesn't exist, I think you and I could make some real bucks. We could be consultants.
Okay, let's do this.
Take our show on the road.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, one more like granular question.
Okay.
Talk to me about the difference between leading Sunday morning worship sets and like leading at the national conference
man.
or a regional conference. Because there's a lot of worship leaders who are listening to us right now, and the Vineyard's going to do like 9 regional conferences this year, and then next year we're going to have a national conference. And
Yes.
maybe you've been leading at your local church for a while, and they're going to do a youth event in your area, and they've asked you to come. Like,
Yes.
talk to me just what's different about that? How can you be a good leader when you're not just leading at your local church, but you're going to something that's maybe bigger or like more, it's including more people?
Mm-hmm. The first thing, I wish somebody would have told me this. I spent a lot of time being very anxious about how it's bigger and there's more expected. And I mean, they must trust me a little if they ask me, but they don't know that. I feel like you almost feel like an imposter, right? It's like they don't know I'm probably not as good as they think I am. All that junk. You can trust that what you've done for your local church is still as usable on a bigger stage. Meaning, I don't change my prep. It's not like all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I must read the Bible for 3 hours, and
What,
like
you don't?
It's like I got to get more holy in a minute to deserve the
I've got
stage.
30 seconds to get all the sin out of my life.
Exactly. But it's weird.
Yeah.
It sounds funny, but that is how our brains work. It's like if it's bigger, it requires more. It requires more in certain areas. But the first thing you should hear is, I can trust the foundation that God has built with me and my life of worship and the prep that I would do for the 5 songs for my church in Denver. I can do the same consistent prep for the whole Vineyard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if that's true, the more part of it for me is the musical stuff. So what I mean by that is, in some ways, leading at the national conference is easier because you don't put musicians that aren't solid in their abilities on large stages. Like you don't go into studios to record and don't have like really great people tracking.
You have more possibilities.
More possibilities, right? So you almost feel carried, right? Your whole band. I mean, honestly, I joke, but it's not a joke. I'm the worst musician often on the stage when it comes to national conferences. The drummer, the drummer I played with in October,
Calvin.
Oh my gosh! I'm like,
Calvin,
holy cow!
is a monster.
Oh, I was just like, I'm not worthy to be up here.
Yeah, and what was funny is when you were leading, I'm back at the soundboard because I was there or whatever. And Calvin is so amazing. The other musicians are floating on. He's creating
this whole platform.
Yes, he's created this platform, and everybody's just. It's like you're riding the wind.
Literally.
I can see that everybody's just like settled, and it's like we're not even trying because
Totally.
Calvin is holding us all.
So that's a good thought to have. It's like, oh, this could actually be less work for me because, I mean, this isn't bad, but the local musicians are usually volunteers and you're not getting that caliber of musicianship.
Sure.
And when you're being hired to do something, there's more possibility. And so that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But what it requires is I want to go in very clear about where I'm taking them, right? Like they can't intuit. My band in Denver can intuit because they know my leadership style, my vocabulary. That they just know me.
Even the way that
just the way that my voice inflects.
Yeah.
Yes. Calvin doesn't know this.
No.
So that means I have a little more homework to do in what I'm giving him direction for. Hey, I don't want drums in until the top of the second verse. Just that decision, right? And hey, this bridge we're doing, I know that usually it's like, build the bridge. I actually don't want to do that. Actually, this bridge is going to stay quiet here, and I want the final chorus to be the climax of the song. Have decisions you've made so that you can serve the band well, but the room. So that's just like the stage.
Yeah.
It's such a grace to lead a large room of people because usually they've shown up, like they know why they've shown up. Like at the national conference, All those people are leaders and pastors of churches. They know why they're in the room.
And they paid to be there.
And they paid. They want it.
Yeah.
Sunday, people have been dragged there. People have been convinced by their neighbor. People aren't sure what they're getting into. People have pain from their previous church. People know exactly what they're doing. I mean, you have so many varying degrees of expectancy and excitement and what the heck are we doing, that work is way harder locally. In the national conference, there are moments I could say fish for sale from the stage and people would cheer because they're just joy-filled to be in a room. And again, I'm not saying that means, well, then you don't have to show up well. That just is the grace of that space.
We can let go of some of the pressure we put on ourselves. That's what I hear you say.
Totally.
Like sometimes we go to these regional or bigger events or national conferences and we put more pressure on ourselves when really we should just...
Guys, they're going to go with you.
Yeah.
Right away, they know exactly where to go with you,
Yeah.
you know? And then here's the other thing that I love to tell people. This sounds really like risky to say or irresponsible at best maybe, but when you're in front of a bunch of people that paid to be there that are leaders, like your youth, your regional youth, your whatever it is, you can be more risky in the charismatic invitations. Like, there's not the person there that's like, I brought my neighbor that doesn't know Jesus, so cool it on the prophetic words from stage, you know? And that's not really how we think.
No.
But there's not that like, hey, let's be kind to the people, the seeker folks that don't know what they're doing, right? And even as I say that, I can hear people being like, well, how seeker friendly is your church? There's just a hospitality that comes on Sundays. There's just being, like, you wouldn't like have a person off the street come in your house and expect them to go open your fridge for themselves. First off, if they did, you'd be like, this person's really rude.
Yeah, something's going wrong.
Something's
here.
wrong. You would go to the fridge and serve them. And then the more they came, then you say, hey, here's the fridge. Now I expect you to help yourself. Mi casa, su casa. You know what I mean? Right? Like, that's the national conference.
Yeah.
It is like, hey, I remember Jay saying something to me. My pastor's a guy named Jay Pathak. He said, hey, Anabeth, I want you, and he didn't mean it manipulatively. He was trying to give me permission. He said, I want you to be so charismatic that afterwards I have to be like, you really took that too far.
Yeah.
The reason he's saying that is because he experiences worship leaders as hesitant most of the time. He experiences us as being so much more worried about, did we get it wrong and what do people think about us? And he's like, I want you to go for it. He wasn't saying make stuff up and be manipulative. He was like, I expect that heaven's going to come into this room and I want you to facilitate it.
Lean in.
Do it, you know?
Lean in.
And
I love that.
Yeah. It's easier. I mean, can I say the bigger stage? I don't think it's a temperament thing. It's easier. Do your nerves hit you harder? Yeah. But if you can get through that, just going like, there's more people. Okay.
Yeah.
Other than that, every part is kind of easier than Sundays.
Okay. So let's wrap up right here. What would you like to say to people who are just leading at their local church? You do have all those different people who are in the room and you do have people who want to be there. Some people are coming because their, husband said, we're taking the family to church this year. And some people are like, I'm coming to church because I have an addiction and this is my last ditch effort. And some people are like, I'll just try out church, but I don't have any idea what's going on in this room. What does it mean to be a good leader in that environment?
I mean, if you put a gun to my head, you're like, what would you say to them? Right away, I'd say, hey, build a life. Like, you have control of the life that you're building, what you spend time on, what your, life looks like Monday through Saturday. Build a life that you encounter sweetness, sweetness of God's presence, generosity of who He is, like you enjoy living. Because I will tell you this, I have a husband who's phenomenal. I have 2 small kids who are high energy and glorious and hard, but lovely. I live in a community of people that are lovely, who challenge me, who care for me deeply. Like, my life is beautiful, and it's not without its suffering. It's beautiful. And so many times when I wake up on Sunday, because I've experienced and tasted of God's goodness, the sweetness of His presence throughout the week, I'm excited to pass it on. I'm excited to have people all of a sudden aware that God loves them, all of a sudden aware that God sees them. That is the work. Like, the way that you live. I'm cheating a little bit because I give a talk about living from overflow, right? But that is the thing I want to say. Like, you will overflow with something on your stage. let it be the sweetness and your delight in how much you love your life and the glory of God, and not the anxiety and fear and despair that the world is assaulting us with. I mean, it's not like I don't live in the world. I'm assaulted with fear and despair weekly, whether it be social media, what's going on with COVID, what's happening in just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We are assaulted in these things. And so, guys, I also empathize with the weekly, like, servant. You're a servant.
Yeah.
Like, you're serving people, and it is hard work. And sometimes the little things are the things that get me the most. It's like, I mean, this is really hard to say, but my band's not very good today. I would be way easier if my band were killer today. The songs would just happen. And no. And you know what? The minute I start having that stuff, that's sinful stuff come up, I'm like, okay, who is the said person that right now I'm mostly thinking about how well they play the bass? Oh, that's such and such. And this is their story. I mean, like, I enter into the human side of who they are. And then I don't actually care if they miss half the bass notes, because I'm going, oh my gosh, this said person just told me, like, man, it's really hard being a parent, and got really vulnerable with me. And I identified with that. And I just want to serve alongside this real person who's a real dad who's struggling in his parenting the way that I am. I mean, you know, those
are gifts.
That's just what helps. That's what helps me weekly. Because it's a lot of just serving. It's not always like, it's not glory cloud to glory cloud.
It's not. It's a lot of just serving. It's true. It's
So.
true. But thankfully, sometimes the glory clouds show up.
They do.
Yeah,
They
thank you.
do. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord. Awesome. Anabeth, thanks for coming and talking into the microphone.
Thanks, Adam, for having me again.
Are you kidding me? You're always welcome here. We'll have you back. All right,
Sounds
everybody. Hope this was helpful. Peace.
Hey everyone, Casey Corum here, producer of the podcast. Thanks for listening. As always, if you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. First of all, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media. Instagram at the Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. All right, everyone, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace.